Hi, third graders. Hi, friends. Welcome back to a read aloud of James and the Giant Peach. And the last time we joined, we ended at a part where the peach was finally off and it was going up, up, up in the sky. So, chapter 23. In a flash, everybody was up on the top of the peach. "Oh, isn't it beautiful?" they cried. "What a marvelous feeling! Goodbye, sharks! Oh boy, this is the way to travel." Miss Spider, who was literally squealing with excitement, grabbed the centipede by the waist, and the two of them started dancing around and around the peach stem together. The earthworm stood up on his tail and did a sort of a wiggle all by himself, showing his joy. The old green grasshopper kept hopping higher and higher in the air, and the ladybug rushed over and shook James warmly by the hand. The glowworm, who at the best of times was a very shy and silent creature, sat glowing with pleasure near the tunnel entrance. Even the silkworm, looking white and thin and completely exhausted, came creeping out of the tunnel to watch the miraculous ascend. Up and up they went, and soon they were as high as the top of the church steeple above the ocean. "I'm a bit worried about the peach," James said to the others, as soon as all was dancing and shouting had stopped. "I wonder really how much damage the sharks did do to the bottom underneath. It's quite impossible to tell from up here." "Well, why don't I go over the side and make an inspection?" Miss Spider said. "It'll be no trouble at all." "I assure you." And without waiting for an answer, she quickly produced a lengthy silk thread that attached it to one of the ends of the peach stem. "I'll be back in a jiffy," she said, and then she walked calmly over to the edge of the peach and jumped off, paying out the thread behind her as she fell. The others crowded anxiously around the place where she had gone over. "Wouldn't it be dreadful if the thread broke?" the ladybug said. There was a rather long silence. Are you all right, Miss Spider?" James shouted. "Yes, thank you," her voice trailed, answered, and off from below. "I'm coming back up now." And so she came up, climbing foot over the silk thread, and at the same time tucking the thread back into her cleverly little body as she climbed past it. "Is it awful?" I asked her. "Is it all eaten away? Are there great holes everywhere?" Miss Spider clambered back onto the deck with a pleased but rather puzzled look on her face. "You wouldn't believe it," she said, "but actually there's hardly no damage at all. The peach is almost untouched. There's a few little tiny pieces of it out from here and there, but nothing more." "You must be mistaken," James told her. "Of course she's mistaken," the centipede said. "I promise you I'm not," Miss Spider answered. "But there were hundreds of sharks around us. They were churning the water into froth. We saw their great hungry mouths open and shut." "Well, I don't care what you saw," Miss Spider answered. "They certainly didn't do much damage to the peach." "Then why were we starting to sink?" the centipede asked. "Perhaps we didn't start sinking," the old green grasshopper suggested. "Perhaps we were all just so frightened that we simply imagined it." This, in point of fact, was closer to the truth than any of them actually knew. A shark, you see, has an extremely long, sharp nose, and its mouth is set very awkwardly underneath its face and a long way back. This makes it more than less impossible for it to get its teeth into a vast, smooth, curved surface, such as the side of a peach. Even if the creature turned onto its back, it still can't do it, because of the way the nose would always get in the way. Now, if you've ever seen a small dog trying to get its teeth into an enormous ball, then you might be able to possibly imagine roughly how this would be for a shark versus a peach. "It must have been some kind of magic," the ladybug said. "The holes must have just healed up by themselves." "Oh, look! There's a ship right below us!" shouted James. Everybody then rushed over to the side and peered over. Not one of them had ever seen a ship before. "Ooh, it looks like a big one. It's got 3 funnels." You can even see the people on the decks. Let's wave to them. Do you think they can see us? Neither James nor of any of the others knew it, but the ship that was now passing beneath them was actually the Queen Mary, sailing out of the English Channel on her way to America. And on the bridge of the Queen Mary, the astonished captain was standing there with a group of his officers, all of them gasping at the great round ball hovering over them. "Ooh, I don't like it," said the captain. "Nor do I," said the first officer. "Do you think it's following us?" said the second officer. "I'll tell you I don't like it," muttered the captain. "Well, it could be dangerous," said the officer. "That's it," cried the captain. "It's a secret weapon. Holy cats! Send a message to the Queen at once. The country must be warned. Give me my telescope instantly." The first officer handed the telescope to the captain, and the captain put his eye in it. There's birds everywhere," he cried. "The whole sky, it's of birds. What in the world are they doing? And wait a second. There's people on it. I can see them moving. There's do I even need to focus this correctly? Well, it looks like a little boy in a pair of trousers. Yes, I can distinctly see a little boy in some shorts standing up there, and there's a sort of a giant ladybug." "Now just wait a minute, Captain," said the first officer. "And a huge, colossal green grasshopper?" Captain, the first officer said sharply. "Captain, please." "And a mammoth spider? Oh, dear. Has he been drinking whiskey again?" whispered the second officer to the first officer. "And an enormous centipede!" screamed the captain. "Call the ship's doctor at once," the first officer said. "Our captain is not very well." A moment later, the great round ball disappeared into a cloud, and the people on the ship never saw it again. Chapter 24. But up on the beach itself, everyone was still happy and excited. "I wonder where we'll finish up this time," the earthworm said. "Who cares?" they answered. "Seagulls always go back to the land sooner or later." Up and up they went, high above the highest clouds. The peach was swaying gently from side to side as it was floating along. "Wouldn't this be perfect time for a little bit of music?" the ladybug asked. "How about it, old grasshopper?" "With pleasure, my dear lady," the old green grasshopper answered, bowing from his waist. "Oh, hooray, he's going to play for us," they cried, and immediately the whole company sat themselves down in a circle around the old green musician, and the concert began. From the moment that the first note was struck, the audience became completely spellbound, and as for James, never had he heard such beautiful music as this. In the garden at home on summer evenings, he had listened many times to the sound of grasshoppers chirping in the grass, and he had always liked the noise that they made. But this was a different kind of noise altogether. This was real music, chords, harmonies, tunes, and all the rest of it. And what a wonderful instrument the old green grasshopper was playing on. It was like a violin. It was almost exactly as though he were playing upon a real violin. The bow of the violin, the part that moved, was his back leg, and the strings of the violin, the parts that made the sound, was the edge of his wing. He was only using the top of his back leg, the thigh, and he was stroking this up and down against the edge of his wing with incredible skill, sometimes slowly, sometimes fast, but always with incredible skill, sometimes slowly. It was precisely the way a clever violinist would have used his bow, and the music came pouring out and filled the whole blue sky around them with this magical melody. When the first part was finished, everyone clapped madly, and Miss Spider stood up and shouted, "Bravo, bravo, encore, give us some more." "Did you like that, James?" the old green grasshopper asked, smiling at the small boy. "Oh, I loved it," James answered. It was beautiful. It was as though you had a real violin in your hands. A real violin? The old green grasshopper cried. Good heavens, I like that, my dear boy. I am a real violin. It is part of my own body. But do all grasshoppers play their music on violins the same way that you do? James asked him. Sorry, I just wanted to close that up. No, he answered, not all. If you want to know, I happen to be a short-horned grasshopper. I have 2 short little feelers coming out of my head. Can you see them? There they are. They're quite short, aren't they? That's why they call me a shorthorn. And we shorthorns are the only one who plays our music in the violin style, using a bow. A longhorn relative of mine, the ones that have those long, curvy feelers coming out of their heads, well, they simply make their music by rubbing the edges of the top of their wings together. They're not violinists. They're wing rubbers. And a rather inferior noise that these wing rubbers produce, if I do say so myself. It sounds more like a banjo than a fiddle. How fascinating this all is, cried James. And to think that up until now, I had never even wondered how a grasshopper made its sounds. My dear young fellow, the old green grasshopper said gently, there's a whole lot of things in this world of ours that you haven't started wondering about yet. Where, for example, do you think I keep my ears? Your ears? Why, they're in your head, of course. Everyone then bursted out laughing. You mean you don't even know that? Cried the centipede. Try again, the old green grasshopper smiled at James. You can't possibly keep your ears anywhere else. Oh, can't I? Well, I give up then. Where do you keep them? Right here, the old green grasshopper said. 1 on each side of my tummy. It's not true. Of course it's true. What's so peculiar about that? You ought to see where my cousin, the crickets, they keep theirs. Well, where do you keep them? Well, they're in their legs, 1 in each front leg, just below their kneecap. You mean you didn't know that either? The centipede said. You're joking, James said. Nobody can possibly have ears on their legs. Well, why not? Because that's ridiculous. That's why. You know what I think is ridiculous, the centipede said, grinning, as his usual way. I don't mean to be rude, but I think it's ridiculous that you have ears on the side of your head. It certainly looks ridiculous. You ought to take a peek in the mirror someday and see for yourself. Pest, cried Earthworm. Why must you always be so rude to everyone? You ought to apologize to James at once. And that brings us to chapter 25. It always seems like Centipede and Earthworm, they always go back and bicker with each other. Well, I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Hope you're enjoying this book as much as I am.